Hello everyone, happy Friday night. It is February 28th, which means we only have one more day to go in the month. That's right, it's a leap year, but more importantly, that means that March is right around the corner, and that can only mean one thing. March Madness! And it is so close you can almost taste the hot wings coming. But first off, we went 2 out of 3 last night. We nailed it with UCLA beating Arizona State, and we also did very good, with Wisconsin beating Michigan, and that was a tight game for a long time. And again, it just shows what happens when you make your free throws down the stretch. Arizona lost to USC. That's the only one I got right, so that puts our new total to $10. We finally hit double digits in our little charity pool, so in you go. It'll be nice once I start being able to put bigger bills in there. So it's a little bit of a dead news day. There really hasn't been a lot going on since yesterday, so let's cover what we have. One of the things that did come out today was an update to the bracket. There wasn't much movement though, and also I'm kind of glad it's a dead news day because I think I'm getting a wee bit of a cold here, so I'm definitely looking forward to getting some time to rest me voice. But the new bracket, there wasn't much movement. Now, some of the movement there was Rutgers falling. Rutgers is now in one of the last 4 bye slots, and they have been falling. They have been trending very much in the wrong direction lately. And the game they played this week, where they just, lost a heartbreaker against Maryland, isn't going to help that situation at all. I thought they were safely in the field. I really did. Now I have to reconsider, seeing as how they've been falling. And I want them to be in because there are teams like Rutgers and DePaul, to an extent St. John's, that haven't been very good recently, that I kind of want to see not like forever rise to the top, but have little bright spots here and there. So I'm rooting for Rutgers. There's a guy who I converse with pretty frequently who up here that is a Rutgers guy, and he's been pretty excited. So I'm rooting for them on his behalf, but they've got to start playing a little better down the stretch here. Utah State is up from last four in to one of the last 4 byes. Again, they blew the doors off of San Jose State this weekend. I can't remember who they have coming down the stretch, but I think they're going to be favored in their remaining games. I think one of them's Boise State. I think that might be this weekend's game. They should be favored down the stretch, and as long as they don't slip up in the conference tournament, I think they are safe. One of the movements that I'm miffed by was Indiana after losing to Purdue yesterday, and that keeps Purdue as a 15-14 team in the hunt, and I still can't figure out why they're still even being considered at 15-14. I don't get it, but at the same time, they did go in, they did beat Indiana, rivalry game. Remember, throw records out the door. They moved up. Cincinnati was idle. They moved down. Wichita State's still right there. They got a win last night. But, teams like Arkansas, Memphis, and Purdue are just, they're hanging by a thread, and And again, with Purdue and Minnesota, I don't understand why Purdue and Minnesota. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of curious about something. Hold on one second. Because I didn't check the Bubble Watch article. I wonder if, thanks to the Minnesota game, if they have fallen out of favor. Let me go check the page real quick. Bracketology. That's what I want, was the Bubble Watch updated through Thursday's games. So let's see. If we go down to the Big Ten, should be in is Rutgers. Work to do is Indiana and Purdue. Okay, Minnesota is still there. I look at Purdue and Minnesota and I still don't understand why they are still there. Confusing to me. But excuse me very much. I'm sorry. I should probably mute while if I can feel that coming. But one of the that's sort of where we're sitting right now. There aren't major marquee top 25 matchups this week. There are a few. So for me, one of the biggest questions going into this college basketball weekend is, are Kansas and Kansas State going to have to break out the boxing gloves? Let's remember, the last time they played, massive brawl at the end of the game. Let's see if they can keep it civil. I'm going to be very interested to see how the refs call this one, to see if they can prevent a similar situation than what just happened from going down. But that's essentially where we stand going into the weekend for college basketball. We still have some combine to talk about. I believe today is either offensive or defensive linemen, and I think over the weekend is when they're going to do the linebackers and the defensive backs. But some standout workouts have come out. Let's talk first about Henry Ruggs of Alabama, who ran a 4.2740, which is almost the record that was set by Jonathan Ross a few years ago. And that record still stands. Just remember one key fact here, though. Just because you run a lightning quick 40 doesn't mean you're going to translate into an NFL superstar, a la Jonathan Ross. Now, yes, Ross had a better year last year. It was I don't want to call it a super breakout year, but and more than anything, it's injuries that have derailed him. But he has not been. The Bengals really stretched on him with I can't remember what number pick it was, but a first round draft pick on him. A lot of us at the time said it was a waste of a pick, and it's certainly hasn't panned out to be worth where they drafted him at. So from that aspect, let's just see how he goes. I don't know where he was projected to begin with. Now, one of the players that is projected to go high from a skill set is another wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb of Oklahoma. And Oklahoma's top two potential draft picks for this year are doing very well at the combine. Their stock is going up as far as we can tell. CeeDee Lamb had one of the most amazing catches I've seen at the combine. Now, I've seen much more impressive circus catches, yes, but those are from players who are well experienced in the NFL and already have many years' experience there. This catch leaps 360 and Landon does a rolling somersault, and still manages to complete the catch. It was definitely one for the highlight reel. But also at the combine, Jalen Hurts is doing workouts, and he's really looking he's looking stronger than I think he was projected to be going in. So his stock is improving. I just don't know where he's going to fall, and I say fall with all the respect in the world. But we can already think of quarterbacks that are better than he is. Now, is he a tier 2 or is he a tier 3 style quarterback? Because we already know the tier 1. The tier 1s are Burrow and Tua. Is Herbert... The question is Justin Herbert included in that tier 1 or is he a tier 2? That's the big question I have. The way his workouts have been, because he's looked very good late in the year. He looked extraordinarily good in the Rose Bowl, and then really performed very well at the Senior Bowl. So his stock is going up. Now, where is he going to go is also a question. Are there teams that are going to look to trade up for him? And after that, you have the kid from Utah State, whose name I sadly can't remember off the top of my head, who's having good workouts. There's the kid from Washington. So where does Jalen Hurts mix in with that bunch? I think he's with the Utah State quarterback and the Washington quarterback as far as where his ranking should be. But he's certainly doing himself a lot of favors at the combine this week. And then we got to show a little bit of love for a punter. So this guy named Michael Turk, and he's the punter for Arizona State last year. He transferred in from Lafayette. He was averaging somewhere. He's definitely probably the best special teamer, I would think, coming out. He did 25 reps of the bench press, which is 225 pounds. I mean, that's impressive, especially for, a guy who's shorter than, I'm only 6'1". I'm not by any means tall, but someone who's definitely shorter in stature than me, benching 225 at the combine 25 times. Now, again, it's impressive, but how does a bench press benefit you apart from, ooh, look at what I did, especially if you're, especially for a punter. Like, I get it for, the linemen. The linemen need to, the position players. I get that one, but I don't know if I'm going to get overly excited about bench press reps if for a punter or a kicker. That being said, though, at least he can claim that he outbenched big names like Jadeveon Clowney, Chandler Jones, Frank Clark, and Michael Bennett. It's actually really interesting to go back and think about it because the year Clowney came out, he did not work out well at all. I think he did go to the combine. I don't think he really did much of the drills, but he did some of the workouts like the bench press, and he did not impress. And I think his draft was mostly based on what was already seen on the field. His workouts at the combine obviously didn't hurt him. Plus, I think he also performed better at his pro day, but I'd have to go back and take a look at that. Apart from that, that's really it for the week in the NFL, unless something else comes up. The CBA is still out. There's a lot of players, and I saw some videos of some players who are still dissenting against it, including both the Pouncey brothers, and they put out this scathing video that was a lot of fun to watch. But yeah, this is going to be very interesting. I don't know what the timetable is for the vote at this point. This is a very, very divided locker room, and I'm going to be very interested to see going forward if it's going to create rifts in locker rooms over how people vote. And the funny thing is that the guys that have come out and said no, most of the people that have come out and voted no, or at least admitted that they've already voted no, are the guys who make the millions and millions of dollars. We haven't really heard much from the back end guys that would be benefiting from the pay increase and the extra game check, that are only making the hundreds of thousands versus the millions upon millions. Again, is it going to create rifts between the megastars and the average Joes? Only time will tell. But that's it for the NFL. The Astros plunk-o-meter is going to be a segment here every day that I can potentially try and squeeze it in. We add one to it. We have 7 Astros players hit by pitches so far. Now, I did read an article that says, 3 out of the 7 hit batters were not part of the year that they won the World Series, a la the cheating scandal. I guess in those cases we'll give them a pass, or we'll just say guilty by association. I'm going to go with they'll give it a pass. If anyone's going to get plunked, it was going to be Altuve and Bregman and a couple of the other players that are still around from when the scandal happened. But 7 Astros players plunked so far in spring training, and it's only been 4 or 5 games. Again, dead news day. There's really not much more to add to that. Apart from maybe Boston's ace pitcher going to miss a few other than Chris Sale of the Boston Red Sox going to miss, I think, the rest of spring training, or at least some of the beginning of the season, because he's recovering from having been pretty sick. I think he had pneumonia over this winter, so I think he's still trying to get over that. I think they're going to rest him, get him on the right schedule. But apart from that, that's all the baseball news really going right now. I do want to go to the NBA now. I wanted to pick some NBA games this weekend. There's not really the only marquee matchup that I really would want to put a wager on is a game that I picked a few days ago, and I don't really want to repeat a game that I picked in the same week. So there are no NBA games in my picks. It's all college basketball. I did 2 top 25 matchup plus 3 games that matter for the bubble in college basketball. But there is something that came out yesterday that made me giggle just a little bit in the NBA. Now, I had forgotten that a few years ago they had put in this resting players rule. And what was essentially going on is fans were up in arms. The fans were unhappy because, let's say you're in Orlando and the Lakers are coming to town and you go, yo, let's get tickets to go see LeBron James or Anthony Davis, or the Bucks are coming to town and you're like, let's get tickets to this game. I want to see Giannis play. And then you fork over however much it costs, even for cheap NBA tickets. I've never actually been to a NBA game. I grew up in a city where you don't have an NBA team. Sue me. And for me to go to an NBA game means I'd have to go to Boston, which is 3-ish hours away. So, but to get back on topic, a few years ago, it was really bad because you'd spend all this money, on your tickets, your parking, concessions and all that, expecting to see star players. And what was happening is teams were going, well, in order to save workload, we're going to rest this player. And it was especially bad. You could almost call it the LeBron rule, because this is when people, and to this day, people still go, LeBron's in town, I want a ticket to that game. So they would rest these players, and fans were feeling cheated out of their money because this is the player they wanted to see, and they forked over all this money. I mean, and again, cheated is the right word. So the NBA came out with a rule that said, okay, here's what's going to happen. You can rest players at home for a limited number of games. The number I don't know. So you can rest players at home, not on the road, because, on the road, people are coming out to see your team, and you only go to that city 2 times a year, 3, maybe even 3. But, there's only 2 chances to come and see that star player. If you're in that home city, you have many chances. So you couldn't rest players on the road unless they were on an injury report, or there was a reasonable cause to rest that player, like they have a lingering knee issue. In that case, it shows up on your team's medical report. You don't get slammed for that, and a lot of fans will have that information well in advance, so they won't feel quite as cheated, and they are also very understanding of injury situations and stuff like that. The reason I bring this up is because for the first time we've actually had a fine concerning this rule. The Minnesota Timberwolves were fined, I believe it was $25,000 for arresting D'Angelo Russell, who they just acquired at the trade deadline. Now, they have accepted the penalty. They're like, fine, we accept this, but hear our statement. And I wrote down the statement. Let me take a sip of water, and I will read it as I wrote it. I think I have it exactly. Let me see what they said. All right, I'm going to put this down real quick. Okay. The quote from the Timberwolves is an argument that they are a player-centric organization that's focused on learning and optimizing our players' bodies. As a new player in our program, we chose to rest D'Angelo in order to learn his body better and to optimize his health during a difficult stretch of games and travel. From that aspect, I understand it. However, it does violate the rule that they put in place. If they had said, well, he's got a knee that needs to rest, that would be a completely different situation, if he has some sort of nagging injury. But in this case, it just seemed like it was a healthy scratch, did not play. Reason? Rest. So, the NBA threw them the fine. They've accepted it for what it is. And I'm okay with it. Minnesota seemed okay with it. They gave a reason. I actually believe it's a valid reason. But, the rule's there for a reason. Simple as that. Okay. That's kind of it for the NBA, as I said. A little bit of a dead news day. All right. We have... Let's make our spicy picks for the weekend. All right. What did I pick? I picked a Big Ten Top 25 matchup. Maryland and Michigan State. Maryland is hosting Michigan State. ESPN's Game Day is going to be there. A few weeks ago, Game Day was at Michigan State when it was Maryland coming there. This is a bit of a rematch. I know I picked that game a few weeks ago. And I know I said, hey, I'm not picking the same game in the same week. Well, it's not the same week, so it doesn't count. Plus, a couple weeks on, Michigan State is now a team on a roll. Maryland barely escaped the Rutgers game. Oh, excuse me. Maryland barely escaped the Minnesota game. I had the games mixed up. Whoops. Okay. I'm going to go with, let's see here. Who did I pick? I picked I picked Maryland. Home team needs they barely won. They're going to probably come out angry. Plus, there's a lot on the line. The number one overall seed is on the line in the ACC. Now, Duke losing to Wake Forest earlier this week benefits them. Still trying to wrap my head around how Duke loses that game against Wake. Just inexcusable. So I'm going to go with the Maryland Terrapins to beat Michigan State. I said 80-71 would be the final. I went with an SEC matchup. We have Auburn and Kentucky. And Kentucky is starting to really roll. And this is a very different style of UK team. It's not the UK starting 5 freshmen that we've come to see out of Calipari. It's been very interesting watching how the landscape of recruiting has changed. It used to be John Calipari would get all the big-name recruits to Kentucky, and he'd be starting these 5 superstar freshmen year in and year out that would all be like lottery picks or late first-rounders that year. And the landscape of the recruiting has changed. Now Duke's getting those guys. Other teams are getting those guys. Even this year Memphis got some of those guys, and yet Memphis is falling like a rock right now. But UK is starting to really pick up steam. I'm going to take the Wildcats in this one, 81-76. Auburn's playing real well too. So I'm going to say it's going to be a tight one. All right, and then the other 3 games I picked this week are key cut line March Madness games here. Providence is going to Villanova. Providence currently listed as one of the last 4 in. Losing this game wouldn't hurt them, and I'm going to pick the Villanova Wildcats in this one to beat Providence. But I think it depends on how the other teams around them do. But on its own merits, I think Providence, even though they lose this game, are going to stay where they are. We'll do NC State. I know I picked NC State in the Duke game, and now they're playing Pitt, which is a little bit more not upset territory. But this is also one of those games where NC State cannot lose this one. And they really had a rough game this week against North Carolina. North Carolina finally found a way to close out a game. It just happened to be against NC State. That game did not hurt NC State via bracket chances. However, a loss here would hurt. And I will say NC State knows that they're getting desperate. They're going to win this game. They're going to come to play. And I will pick NC State to get the win, 77-70. All right. And like I said, I could have picked Lakers and Pelicans again. Did that this week. I could have done Celtics Rockets. I don't want to do the same team. I don't want to do the same team for the second time in 3 days. So I'm going to let that one slide, and we'll go with a hometown game. I'll do Xavier and Georgetown. Xavier, one of the last 4 byes, I think. Georgetown is hovering on that line of next 4 out, is where I believe they are. A win for Xavier probably keeps them right where they are. A loss probably moves them down to one of the play-in games. Georgetown, a loss for them puts them out of the picture completely. A win for them maybe moves them up to like first four out. Probably. I'm going to pick the hometown team to win this one. I'm going to take Xavier 70-66. I don't feel very confident in it because Xavier has tendencies to trip up. Now, it's a road game, I believe, so it's going to be a better win than if they had gotten it at home. But man, Xavier's very average. Georgetown's very average. It doesn't feel like a flip a coin game, kind of. And then we'll have to see how the big Pac-12 games go this weekend, because between Stanford, UCLA, USC, to an extent Arizona State, Colorado's slipping. But more importantly, again, USC, UCLA, and Stanford, between all those games, what happens in those will really affect how the bracket projections look going into next week. And also, we're getting down to the end. We're almost to the end. If I go and take a look at like some of the small conferences, like let me go into the bracketology and let's see if I can find a small. So let's take a look at some of these small teams here. Some of these smaller teams, like Colgate only has one more regular season game left, and that's tomorrow. And then they begin their conference tournament. Vermont. Let me see how many games Vermont has left. I think the answer is 2, maybe 3. They were, a 13? Yeah, there they are. Vermont has just 2 games left. So we're starting to actually get into conference tournaments for some of the smaller teams. And there's only one more week of regular season games for the big teams. So we're getting there. I cannot wait for the tournament to really start getting going. For that, I am going to do. We'll see how timing works out. I probably will do a post-bracket reveal Sunday night show in 2 weeks, but we'll see how that goes. I definitely know I'll do a Pick'em special. I don't know when that will be. Here's what I'll do is I'll probably film that on Wednesday night and get it uploaded on Thursday morning of the tournament. That's currently the plan there. But we can't get too far ahead. We have key games coming up. And again, the conference tournament's right around the corner. Once again proving that potentially the regular season in college basketball does not matter that much. Will bids be stolen? We'll have to see. But for now, I'm starting to get the sniffles. Again, I can feel the cold coming on, so I'm sorry if I had to pause the mic a few times to cough a little bit. I hope everyone has a great night. I hope everyone has a great weekend. We'll see how many times we have to spin the wheel on Monday. And until next time, have a great weekend. I'll see you then.